Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Peter Lindstrom, and I will call the Environment Committee for November 8th to order. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We've got a great agenda this afternoon, and without objection, the agenda is approved, and that takes us to our non-consent business. Nothing on our consent agenda.
Minutes.
And the minutes. Oh my gosh, the minutes of October 25th. I need glasses, I think is the deal here.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes
And
as
I will second
presented.
that.
Hey, there we go. Motion has been made and seconded for the minutes of October 25th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries. Thank you. Thanks for calling me out on that one. And nothing on our consent agenda. One item on our non-consent business agenda, which is 2022-280. This is the Unified Operating Budget, fourth quarter amendment. Mr. Gsellmeier, welcome.
Hello, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Matt Gsellmeier, and I'm the Budget Manager in Environmental Services. I'm here today to present business item 2022-280JT, which is a fourth quarter operating budget amendment. This will go to the Management Committee and the Council on November 30th, pending your approval here today. The proposed action today is that the Metropolitan Council, The proposed action today is that the Metropolitan Council authorizes the amendment of the 2022 Unified Operating Budget as indicated in Attachment A, Table B1, to increase wastewater expenses by $7.925 million and increase wastewater revenues by $3.825 million. And on the expense side, we are requesting a $7.925 million increase in our operating budget. $6 million of this is for chemicals and utilities. On the chemical side, we are seeing a large inflationary price increase for polymers. And on the utility side, we've seen the price of natural gas double over the last year. We're also seeing price inflation for electricity, but there's also increased use due to a capital project at the Metro plant and additional blower use. But again, that electricity increase is primarily for inflation. In addition, we are requesting a $1.3 million increase in our materials and supplies budget. The average price of the materials we purchase has increased by 24% over the last year. And we are projecting to be over by $4.5 million in materials and supplies. With that said, the materials and supplies overrun will be partially offset by expected savings in salaries and interdivisional costs, which is why we are requesting $1.3 million for that materials and supplies. The final expense piece we are requesting is $625,000 for water efficiency grants. This is pass-through money that you will also see on the revenue side, and the reason we did not include it earlier is due to the legislative calendar and the timing of the appropriation. It's also a bit hard to predict state appropriations when we set our budget, and in some years we plan a bit more than we get, other years we plan a bit less. And we just want to bring more clarity to our budget, which is why that piece is included today. On the revenue side, we're proposing a $3.825 million increase. $3.2 million of this increase is for a large industrial waste customer who was having some sampling issues. And when these issues were corrected, the cost of their discharge went up. We do not anticipate the higher revenues from this customer to continue into 2023, but the timing is somewhat helpful given the larger expense increases from inflation right now. And then finally, we have the offsetting pass-through revenue for the water efficiency grants. And again, that is due in part to timing and our efforts to bring clarity to that state appropriation part of our budget. So with that, I am proposing that the Metropolitan Council authorize BI 2022-280JT, and I will stand for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Gsellmeier? Council member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that the increased costs are in our next budget for next year, because I'm assuming that they're not going to suddenly go down come January.
Yes, I would, Mr. Chair, members of the Environment Committee, I would say that we have included some of those price increases. We've been ramping up our materials and supplies, knowing that those prices are going up. We also knew during the 2023 budget season that the price of our chemicals and utilities were going to be going up. Have we attributed for all of that? There's some uncertainty. I won't say for sure. There might be some additional request in next year, but I'd say that we've captured in the millions, certainly, of that impact, without specifically saying, what we might need in 2023.
As long as it's accounted for next year, that's fine.
Other questions? Yes, Councilmember.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. and, Thank you. My question has to do with I know, for example, on the transportation side, we will hedge diesel. So we kind of have 2 years ahead. And I'm wondering, since we're always using chemicals and polymers, would it make sense to try to do longer range purchases of these or try to hedge some of our, or buy in longer term contracts so we're not so at the mercy of these inflationary times of that then?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Councilmember Sterner, the challenge we're having right now is to signing into longer-term contracts with the chemical suppliers. There's only a few suppliers that will, when we put out the request, will complete the bid, and many of them are trying to hedge their bets on their end, and so that they are uncertain with what's going to happen with inflation right now. So I think that we typically have, contracts for a few years, and when we can sign them, we will. But what my understanding is that we are facing a challenge right now to get into some of those longer-term contracts. But I think it's something that we're working on and hopefully can address to put us in the best position possible.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Wolf.
And we did just have to adjust the contract because the price went up so much that it wasn't going to be a functional contract anymore. So inflation is lovely.
Yeah, no kidding. At last night's Community Development Committee, we talked about the price of electricity increasing, and that's been on my radar screen, but the cost of natural gas doubling has not been on my radar screen as much. Any comments on that, or do we anticipate that in, continuing in the near future? I know it's tough to predict. Your thoughts on that?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I would say that I think the prices that we have now will continue. I don't foresee a reduction in the price of our natural gas next year. But we will certainly use every tool at our resource to plan for it, whether it's shifting line item budgets or if it comes to be requesting additional budgetary funds.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Councilmember.
Thank you. I just was wondering, what numbers you use for the inflation? Are we planning on the inflation kind of continue what it has been doing this year to ramp up, or you have numbers in where it's slowing down since the discount rate has been moved up several times?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we do look at the current rates that we're paying, so the current kilowatt hours or therms that we're paying for our energy use. And then we also look at the demand that we're going to have, so how much of those units we're going to use, and that's how we complete our projections. So, and then we also account for different things such as solar use and bake that in as, or solar energy credits that we're gonna get and bake those in. So we are currently using, when we're doing our projections, the most current rates that we are facing and using that in our projections.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Well, we got to pay the bills, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not the most fun thing that we do, but we got to do it. Any other questions? Please,
Move
Councilmember
approval.
Wolf.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Carries. Thank you very much. And that takes us to our information items, where the first one is our climate action plan, which I think this is the third, is it the third or fourth committee that we've been at talking about the climate action, through transportation, community development, We got management coming up tomorrow, I think, and here we are at environment. So I think the three folks here have all heard me, either been on the work plan committee, or have heard it in various committees in various forms. So I won't take up too much time. I will just turn it over to Lisa and Jen to lead us through what's on tap for environmental services. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to see you. Many of you, I just saw you yesterday, so you get to hear me say, hopefully not the same thing twice, but it should sound familiar to you. I'm filling in for David Ponder today, who otherwise would be presenting with Jen, and really took the lead on developing this presentation for this committee today. He had a great opportunity to be in Denmark, and we couldn't keep him here, so I don't begrudge him that opportunity. But today, just as a reminder for everybody, before we jump into actions and I turn it over to Jen for that discussion, we just wanted to ground ourselves in the Climate Action Work Plan and its purpose, really building on the work that we've been participating in at the state level on the Climate Action Framework, unifying our work across the agency, learning from one another and doing better, more together and faster. But also living up to our commitments in Thrive MSP, which when we were developing that was new for our work. While we had some operational experiences for sure, we certainly did not have a council-wide approach to our work. And over the last 8 years since Thrive's adoption, we've really been building our internal expertise across the agency and have had a lot of opportunities here to accelerate our work. This will look familiar to many of you for many reasons, but just a reminder that we're not starting from scratch, and that's the main message of this slide, is that this work that we're doing in the Climate Action Work Plan really builds on a whole series of work that we've been doing over the last 10, 15, 20 years as an agency, and this just represents some of our more recent work over the last 5 or 6 years in the realm of climate action, especially as it relates to both our operations and the technical assistance that we provide in the region. On our project timeline, for your familiarity, is that we're working right now in that Q4 on that right-hand side of the arc there, working towards adoption, which we have scheduled for December for you all. But I just wanted to remind the committee today, too, that this, while there's just a couple of us sitting in front of you, and I've had the pleasure of speaking on behalf of the team over the last month or so on this project, that this project is actually led by a cross-divisional team of staff from our project managers from community development, environmental services, and Metro Transit. But it also includes a larger climate action planning team of 40-odd plus members from across all of the divisions of the council, who in some ways do climate work as part of their work every day, whether it's around energy, in facilities maintenance, around technical assistance, internal research, or external research, just a whole wide range of staff who have been involved and continue to be involved in the development of this plan. So as I mentioned earlier, this effort is really closely dovetails with the state's work over the last couple of years to develop the State Climate Action Framework, which includes a significant amount of overlap with the work that we do at the council, including priorities around transportation and transit, priorities around the built environment, and priorities around agricultural, natural, and working lands, which we have all of these in our region as well, both in not just in mitigation, but in adaptation too, recognizing that we're experiencing the impacts of climate change across our landscape already today. Today, our Climate Action Work Plan, however, unlike the state plan, our Climate Action Work Plan is really focusing on our internal operations and really focused on the work that we have in front of us, paying our bills, reducing our emissions, being good stewards of our infrastructure investments that we have on the ground, and thinking forward about what that might mean for our long-range work. This plan really lays the groundwork for additional action beyond 2027. There are a lot of timelines that we have in there, and as you will see in our actions, some actions that don't have funding or staff allocated to them. really meant to give us an opportunity to take advantage of funding opportunities that might come from the federal or state level when they present themselves. But that also means if we don't have those fundings, that's still work that can be done in the future as we continue to do this work. In October, when I spoke with you at the council, I talked about more in depth the commitments that we have organized the Climate Action Work Plan around, and spent a fair amount of time going through each of these commitments and the strategies. Today, the actions that Jen will review for you for environmental services are, I think, organized around mitigation and adaptation, so not necessarily around these commitments, but they are all connected, and you can see that in the matrix of how each of the actions are connected to these commitments. And now I'll turn it to Jen.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I'm here to talk about the action matrix, and first off, if you do have a hard copy, I promise it's not a vision test. I picked it up and suddenly was really concerned for my own vision. So within this matrix, however, there are over 60 actions, and so I'm going to be talking about the ones that Environmental Services has been chosen to lead or co-lead. So I'm not going to touch all of them, and even of the ones that Environmental Services has been chosen to co-lead, I'm going to be talking about the ones that we have decided are foundational to the work that we are doing. And so the other part of the Climate Action Plan, as we were going through it, it's quite clear that as climate manifests itself, it is going to manifest itself through water primarily. And so that puts Environmental Services and the work that we do at the forefront when we are talking about these climate actions and how we can go ahead and move through making sure that we accomplish these actions. And so there's two different ways, like Lisa mentioned. We're going to have both mitigation and adaptation actions. We have grouped them into priority 1 and priority 2 lists. Both are foundational lists. It's just talking about whether it's high impact and low difficulty, which those are the actions that fall under priority 1, or high impact and high difficulty. Still very important, but priority 2 is how we're designating them. If we look at the list of foundational items that have made it to the slide, we know that we need to plan for energy management, and that we know that we need to take into account how much and how efficiently we're using that energy. And so that's where we're going to start with one of our foundational tasks. Wastewater is an energy-intensive process, and we know that we can use a continuous improvement lens to help us identify areas in which energy improvement can be increased. We also know that we need to identify energy targets for the division and where possible at the facility level. It's through these targets that we can really track how we are making progress on our energy management. Lastly, we need to make sure that we are going to evaluate our pathways to make sure that we are getting to 100% renewable energy purchases. And if we can get to that metric, this will go a long way in reducing our energy or carbon footprint. Within our priority 2 lists, again, I want to reiterate, foundational, very important, but just a little bit more difficulty to accomplish these tasks. The first one on the slide there that I want to address is the opportunity to identify, evaluate, and document our energy saving opportunities when we're looking at planning our new facilities or looking at our asset management. If we accomplish this task, it can help us to point towards energy improvements or upgrades that we can do as we are addressing our facility work, and then that can help pay off with energy savings. We also need to continue to work on our energy and resource recovery through our processes, specifically our biosolids management. We already do this, and I also want to make a point of saying that some of these actions that are on the list are actions that we are already doing or enhancements to the work we're doing. So it's not like we're taking on 60 new tasks. So apologize, I should have said that earlier, but I want to make sure that is a key point to say with that. We are being ambitious with this plan, but we also are trying to build on the efforts that we are currently doing in environmental services. And so looking at the biosolids management is another way that we can enhance the work we're already doing and perhaps improve our savings, energy savings and recovery efficiencies. Lastly, we need to identify and quantify where emissions are being derived from our processes. And then it'll allow us to find opportunities to try to get those emissions reduced. So those are some of the foundational tasks that we've identified through this plan. In addition to mitigation, the one I would like to say cool part about the climate action plan is that we're not just looking at mitigation activities. Usually when folks say climate action plan, it's mitigation focused. And so ours is a little bit more unique in which we're looking at both mitigation and adaptation avenues. And so when we're looking at these actions, same type of prioritizations, the high impact, low difficulty tasks are on the slide here. And our first step is to pull our regional partner organizations, our state agencies, and our residents together to really have a conversation about where the region is on our water and climate actions. There are some cities and counties that have gotten a little bit ahead of us, and that's fantastic. We can learn from them as to what activities that they have done and that have been successful, or perhaps some lessons learned so that we don't fall into the same pitfalls. We also can share what we've learned and try to inspire other communities and counties and other organizations to move forward with their own climate actions as well. We can't do this without coming together. And so if we are going to learn from each other, we need to come together and convene that conversation. As we learn from others within the region, we want to make sure that we're encouraging our watershed and city planners to consider the best practices within their own communities. And so through our review letter processes, when they are in their own planning process, it's a major way in which we can share that information that we learn from the climate adaptation actions to our partners to hopefully further this implementation of the adaptation work. And then lastly, we need to keep in mind that the Climate Action Plan has a 5-year window for these actions. And so where appropriate, we do have an item that we will try to integrate some of these mitigation and adaptation actions into our regional planning process. So specifically for environmental services, that would be in the Water Resources Policy Plan. For our priority 2 adaptation actions, convening and planning and policy creation is not easy work, but they're a little bit less difficult than some of these items on this slide. They're a little bit more technically focused. And so we know that we need to figure out where we internally for our facilities and our processes are vulnerable to climate. And the first step and the foundational step that we have for that is to create a vulnerability assessment and screening tool for council-owned facilities. It will help us identify where those risks are and hopefully allow us to propose actions to safeguard our regional infrastructure from changes in climate. While we're looking at our own properties and increasing, we hope to increase the amount of nature-based and green infrastructures within our properties, we also want to make sure that we have the technical advisory capability internally to look to ourselves and then also share that information within the region so that we can help our regional partners do the same. And then lastly, as we're looking to integrate climate projections into our assessments, models, and tools to identify vulnerable regional locations, this is actually a really great concept and one that's close to my heart. I'm currently leading one of these projects. And that example is how we can improve and enhance our blue spot map. Right now, the blue spot map is very good at identifying localized flooding, but with some additional data inputs and potential redesigns, we can make that map a lot more informative so that we can see where we are at risk for, in addition to localized flooding, but also riverine and groundwater flooding. And the great thing about these tools is once we make them for us, they are also shareable, and so others can benefit from having these tools, and we all can identify where we're at risk for climate concerns into the future. And so those are the foundational items that we want to start working on in 2023 after the plan gets adopted. There are a lot more in here. Hopefully you can see. And so it's really where we want to get that work started. And those are the tasks that really will get us moving towards some of these other items on the action list. And so with that, I want to open this up for discussion. We do have some questions in front of you, but if you have others, we welcome them.
Thank you very much. Questions? Please, Councilmember.
Not a question so much as a comment. I spoke some yesterday at the other meeting, but I just want to reiterate part of it here is I want to make sure that we don't, and first of all, I really appreciate all of the work that ES has done with their sort of everything but the squeal approach to wastewater, where you're getting all the energy out and nutrients and everything that we can get out of it rather than just putting it down a drain or in a landfill somewhere. And the energy efficiency work that we've been doing on our plants and whatnot, I think it's great work. The only concern I have going forward with this is that we not do anything that makes energy more expensive or less reliable. Because not only can we look at other people for what they're doing good, we can look at other places for what they're doing poorly. And Germany's a really good example of what not to do, where they outsourced all of their energy to other places to kind of put the pollution in somebody else's bucket. And now they don't have energy reliability and they're suffering for it. And so anything along those lines, we've got to put our customers first, because no matter what emissions we get rid of, if you're looking at it globally, even as big as we are, we can't undo as much as one coal electrical plant in China. So let's not go broke in search of an ideology or something that is going to not make a big difference. The cost of energy makes much more difference to the well-being of our region, doing it responsibly and cost effectively. I have concerns also about us doing the accounting of the greenhouse gases, because that encourages the same sort of thing that Germany did. You put your pollution in somebody else's bucket rather than doing things the right way for everybody. So that's my concern.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. When I was reviewing this afternoon, I was thinking, and I think it was hammered home with the report we just had about the cost of natural gas going up. In environmental services, more than any other division, we can make lemonade out of lemons, meaning we have all this stuff. I think you alluded to it, Councilmember Wolf. We have all of this inflow coming in, and it is energy intensive to take care of it responsibly. And at the same time, it's coming in at 50 degrees, no matter if it's 20 degrees below zero, 50, 55 degrees, correct me if I'm wrong, something like that. There's a lot of thermal energy in that wastewater. We can take what's coming in and do some combined heat and power to heat our facilities or to create electricity to power our facilities. We can do more of that. And so I'm excited that this plan incorporates some of the things that we're already doing and some of the things that we could be doing, as long as it makes financial sense and as long as it's a good course of action on many different levels, that we can take it and run with it. Other questions, comments?
I do apologize. I have a couple more slides. I got to the discussion, so so excited to hear what.
Yeah, that's great. The more the merrier.
Then I promise we'll open it up for more questions. Oh, sorry. So the last slide. So this is just talking about the next steps for the plan. In case you were curious, hopefully you are. So we are halfway through all these bullets at November 8th with the Environment Committee. And so there's a few more bullets for going through other committees to have an opportunity to reflect on the actions and strategies from each committee's perspective. And then the plan is to take it in front of the council for the final approval in December. And then hopefully we can start working on the plan after that. If you wanted to add anything.
So I'll get to see some of you tomorrow at Management Committee as well. We'll talk about other actions in the matrix that support this cross-divisional work going forward, and especially some of the buildings and actions that aren't part of our operations are part of that. And really looking forward to that discussion at Management, and then at Committee of the Whole, we'll do a summary of what we've heard from across the committees and some proposed changes that we are proposing to do in response to those feedback, and our own double looks after taking a little bit of time away from the plan and then going back to read it again, some other revisions, and then we'll bring the full revised plan to you in December.
And then David did promise that he would field all of your emails, so. If you have any questions, do feel free to email David or I. So.
That sounds great. One thing I did want to mention is that One of the, one of the actions involves LiDAR for the, partnering with the not wastewater, the watershed agencies, I think, on doing a comprehensive LiDAR mapping of the region. And I heard that there may be a state budget proposal for statewide LiDAR mapping for renewable energy. I'm sure there's many, many different ways to reuse this LiDAR data, but this was coming through the Department of Commerce, a budget proposal for renewable energy, but I'm sure we could use it for our own purposes as well. I don't know where that's at. I think it was kind of like trying to get something up to the governor's, included in the governor's budget, but I don't know where it's at. But I wanted to make sure you were aware that it may be coming, or if we could encourage that. Again, I heard about it through the Department of Commerce. That's as much as I know.
Mr. Chair, that's actually very exciting news. Our hope is that we are able to fly LiDAR over the metro a little bit more often. The state has been on a plan every 10 years to fly LiDAR. It's just with the rate of development that's happening within the metro, it would be useful to get that data a little bit more often. And so that's exciting news. Thank you very much for sharing
Good.
that.
I hope it happens.
Yeah, me too.
Mr. Chair, that's part of our coordination at the subcabinet, the climate subcabinet, with the staff that are kind of coordinating all of those. So certainly we have a whole series of coordination, interagency coordination meetings of, hey, I like your project. Can we talk about that a little bit more? That we're trying to squeeze in here in between the holidays, and commerce is the next one on my list. But thank you.
Perfect. You can just say a little birdie told you that LiDAR budget, something, something.
I do remember them saying something about there's a long list of proposals that eventually we'll need
Sure.
to cut back to what will hopefully end up in a budget proposal, but yes, absolutely.
Great. Other questions, comments? Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And that takes us to our next information item, which is 2022 residential wastewater rates. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chair Lindstrom and committee members. Let's see if we get this. I will give an overview and some detail of our biennial look at the retail sewer charges that each of our 111 cities in our 7-county region charge their homeowners. And for anyone listening that doesn't know, MCES charges the same wholesale sewer rate per volume of wastewater to all the cities, and then all the cities mark up or charge their residents different rates. So what we're looking at today is what those rates are and how they compare to each other. And the main goal is to get an average region-wide rate that we use to compare to nationwide surveys. We look at these rates every 2 years, and we've done it for over 35 years. And as I said, we only concentrate on single-family homes. We don't focus, or we don't look at all at apartments or businesses or industry rates. It's only household rates. And to calculate the rate every year, to be consistent from year to year, we assume a household uses 60,000 gallons of clean water, because of course cities can't charge on wastewater. They only have the water used by the residents, so that's what they charge and set their rates on. And as I said, we mainly use this average rate that we come up with to compare to national rates. For 2022, the weighted average rate was $377. And when I say weighted, we weighted on the number of households in each city. So of course, like Minneapolis's rate is highly weighted in the average. And of the 111 cities, the top 10 range from 614 to 968. The lowest 10 city charges were 160 to 250. And of the $377 charge by the cities, our portion of it was $197 or 52%. And on the table here, I list the 5 largest cities. You can see typically the largest cities have rates that are pretty close to the average, at least somewhat. This graph shows that over the past 25 years, the region's average retail rate increased 3.7%. compared to an average inflation, that's CPI, Consumer Price Index inflation of 2.5%. The red line, the bottom line is the inflation line. And you could see we were tracking pretty close to inflation until the past 10 years when our retail rates have kind of shot upward a bit. And what I don't show on the graph, but if you just look at the past 10 years, that's an average 4.8% increase. And of course, this average rate I'm showing here is the combined rate of ours and the cities. If I pulled out and separated the two, that 4.8% 10-year average would be 3.7% would be our increase, and the cities, for some reason, I don't know why their costs were higher, but they averaged 7% increase per year over the past 10 years. And compared to other large agencies nationwide, and we talked about this in January, you saw these charts. Our rates are very competitive. Our 2022 rate of $377 in 2019, that was the last NACWA survey when we compared to our peer agencies. It was $347 compared to the peer average of $535. So we were effectively 35% less than the average in our last NACWA survey. And if you remember, the peer agencies are defined as those that treat more than 100 million gallons a day, which is roughly about 1 million population. The national charges, the top line is the NACWA average of our 20 or so peer agencies. You can see their rates are actually higher by, well, I guess on average the 35% I mentioned. And you can also see on the bottom line the increase. Well, our 3.7% average increase compares to slightly higher NACWA 4.1% increase. Here is more detail on MCES's portion of the total charge. It's just some history going back. The first column is the average retail charge. The middle column is our portion, and then the far right is the percentage. We've always, I mean, for 30-some years, been consistently between 50 and 60% of the total charge is the amount that comes to us. And one interesting formula or calculation and how we do this is the 60,000 gallons that an average household uses, we assume that equates to about 70,000 gallons of wastewater because of I&I. So wastewater, of course, you know, the rain that's leaking into the pipes adds effectively more wastewater comes to us than water, clean water is sold. I'll just show you now the 10 highest cities and then the 10 lowest charges. These are the top 10. On the bottom I show the Minneapolis, St. Paul, the largest in population for comparison. And then the 10 lowest charged by city are usually small cities. And interesting enough, the 10 largest and 10 lowest are always small cities. And we've kind of found that to be the case for a few reasons. One is they have fewer customers to spread their costs across to. And also geography can impact small cities more than larger cities, because if you're small and dense, that can save you quite a bit. But if it's a small city and you're spread out and you have to pay for a lot of piping to get to the few houses you have, that would quite greatly increase your costs. We also suspect too that maybe smaller cities, we don't know, but it might be easier to use non-sewer funds to pay for some of their sewer costs, because if you remember I noted on the bottom here, $197 is our average charge to a household. And you can see some of these charges don't even cover that or barely do. So they must somehow be funding it from some other source.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
Yep.
Thank you. I looked at that and I was kind of curious about it. It makes me wonder whether they're doing adequate maintenance of their system, because how are you funding the maintenance if you don't have anything above what we're charging?
Yeah, I mean, they can fund their city however they want. An extreme is Medicine Lake. They don't charge sewer charges. They just, property taxes pay for it, and that's it. So, you know, we don't.
As long as they pay the bill to us, we're okay.
Well, but
Yeah.
the maintenance thing does
I
have
know.
an impact on us.
Totally, yeah. I thought about that too. It's like, gosh, I hope that they're not ignoring their infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, of course, they can run their city how they want. We don't track it or what. But in the printed report, I have a few extra if you want. You might have seen them before because we had an interim help with this summer, Penelope Hunter from McAllister. She did a great job because it takes quite a bit. We used to do a survey that we sent out to cities, and that was real cumbersome because we'd get 70% back and we needed 100% of them back, and so we had to do a lot of calling, and the websites on the cities have gotten better like every year. They more and more information. So the last couple of times, we just decided to start getting the rates from their website. And pretty much every city has them on their website somewhere, but sometimes it's a challenge to find them. I mean, I've had to they don't list them, and you have to search their city council minutes, and, it can be time-consuming. So anyway, Penelope did a great job helping and help edit this report, and if you want a printed copy, you can have one. But in the report, there's more detail on how the definition of some of these types of rates. I'll just maybe go over the two top ones, the most popular ones. And the base uniform rate is basically a city would charge you a fixed amount plus a volume charge. It's pretty simple. And a flat charge is just a fixed amount per year per resident. And flat charges, of course, are the easiest for cities to administer. However, they don't encourage water conservation, so we like to see that number drop, and it has been over the years. On this chart shows the percentage of households. And in 2022, there were 17 cities that are still charging flat rates. And 17 is 15% of 111 cities and 6% of the households. So you can see just from those numbers that it's typically the smaller cities that charge flat rates. There's a list, well, there's a table at the back of this report that lists every city and their charging methodology and their average rate and a lot of other information in here. But basically, that's about it, and I'll take any questions.
Excellent report, thank you. Any
Thanks.
questions? Please.
Just a comment that for people like me who hate paper, it's online too.
The what?
That, you get the link right there. We don't need
Oh.
your paper
Yeah,
copy. 'cause-
yeah, you don't. Yeah, we do keep it, we always keep it on our website, maybe even a couple reports going back, but, yep.
Please.
Not sure where I'm supposed to look. North St. Paul is in my district, and I talked with Sam about this earlier, as well as a couple of my colleagues, but just curious as to whether or not there's any more clarification as to the significant amount being charged there. They are a small city, but they're dense, and they're surrounded, so they're not likely to do a lot more expanding. Any insights as to the 600, I think it's $19
Oh, why it's
rate?
higher?
Yeah.
Yeah, usually, that is interesting. A dense, small city usually has a lower rate, so I guess, I'm not sure why that is. They have a base increasing block charge, which is, but I guess I'd have to,
Okay.
If you look in the report, it's gone up pretty dramatically, so that may be a reflection of maintenance work that they've had to do.
They had
Well,
some big
and-
projects or something.
Sam noted that. I was just curious as to whether or not there might be something else, but no, I appreciate that. And I will definitely take a look at the report again.
It's good to see that folks are moving away from just the flat rate. I know that when I was the mayor of my city, or maybe I was on the city council at the time, we changed that away from just a flat rate. And I think just the following year, we saw something along the 10% decrease from our
city
little
was that?
city. Pardon me?
what city?
Falcon Heights.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was many years ago. We got away from that. Other questions? Councilmember Stern?
Just maybe looking the other way, like, it seems like there's two cities that are, way up on here too. Do you think that's more for working on a system, or they've, maybe using it to supplement other parts of their city budget?
I'm sorry,
Like Independence and Orono, they seem like
Councilmember
they're
Stenner, what?
outliers. Well, they're seem quite a bit more like, I mean, some are 600, but there's a lot in the
Oh.
600 range, but these are quite a bit higher. So I don't know if it's like growth for the city, growth of Muciline being expanded or that kind of thing. Any sense of those
Yeah.
two?
Is it really related to what you mentioned before, is that these are less dense, small
sure.
communities where they have a lot of, they may have miles of line, but not too many people in between.
Like larger lots?
Yeah, Chair Lindstrom and Councilmember Sterner, we, it's hard to, I mean, we don't really know
All right.
what, we're just getting the rate and specific city reasons, why they do what they do.
Okay, all right,
Have to research it.
all right, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that takes us to our general manager's report. Lisa, take it away.
Thank you. Just a short report this evening on a contract that you approved last September for legal services for PFAS-related items. Barnes and Thornburg was awarded that contract. It was a 5-year contract for $5 million. And the contract term began last November. And so we said we'd keep you appraised as to expenditures. And as of August, end of August, we've spent $246,000. 26,000 of that was for technical consultant assistance, and 220,000 was for actual attorney's fees. So we're getting some real good value from them, and we're not blowing through that contract quickly, which we're happy to see. We're early adding this work. There's a lot yet that's going to unfold with PFAS, so I think we're in good hands working with this firm, and we're carefully using the funds.
Fantastic. Great. That is a wrap. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.